can God's existence and attributes be proven? In short, yes. Whenever a human artist chooses to paint a picture, we may rationally and validly infer some things about the artist from the art. The same is true about the cosmos, the greatest work of art. Observed facts in every arena of life require an explanation. If we experience motion, causal dependence, the contingency of finite beings, degrees of perfection, and beings working towards an end, there is an explanation. So what I want to do is I want to explain what I mean by this. And I actually want to give the Thomistic argument, the one presented by Dr. Geisler, to explain how we can actually prove the existence and attributes of God. Because I think many people hear it, but sometimes they don't always see it. So sit back, wait right there. We're going to go through this in several steps. First of all, being is. Being is being. Being is not being. Either being or non-being. Non-being cannot produce being, and being causes being similar to itself. These are, in other words, the foundations, the first principles upon which all knowledge and reality exist. The principle of identity, law of non-contradiction, law of excluded middle, law of causality, or the principle of analogy. Laws and principles can be used in similar fashions in this regard. So if things exist, have identity, can't be the exact same, have an excluded middle, every effect has a cause, you can't give that which you don't have, and there's a principle of analogy. You produce beings similar to yourself. If we have these things, what does that do to us in our arguments for the existence of God? Can we actually pull it off? Many say no. Geisler, Aquinas, and Scholastic Reformers, and Edwards, and Warfield, and Gerstner, and Sproul all say yes. So here's what it might look like. A being can be either necessary or contingent, but not both. This is based on the principle of excluded middle. You cannot be both a contingent and necessary being. If you're a contingent being, by definition, you're not a necessary being. If you're a necessary being, by definition, you're not a contingent being. However, a necessary being cannot produce another necessary being. The opposite of this is reducible to a contradiction because A, a necessary being by its nature cannot come to be or cease to be, and B, the being that is caused by a necessary being comes to be, which is contradictory. 9. A contingent being cannot cause another contingent being in the ultimate sense of the term. That's how it should be understood. This is because a contingent being is one that could not be, could be nothing. And if it caused another being, then a non-being would be producing being, which is contradictory in the ultimate sense of cause. A necessary being is being of pure actuality with no potentiality. This is so since a necessary being has no potentiality to not exist. If a necessary being exists, then it must exist necessarily, with no possibility not to exist. 11. A being of pure actuality cannot produce another being with pure actuality. The being that is produced by a being of pure actuality must have both actuality and potentiality, for this created being has the potential not to be, with pure actuality does not have. 12. Every being caused by a being of pure actuality must be both like and unlike its cause. It must be like its cause in its actuality, and it must be unlike its cause in its potentiality. And what is both like and unlike its cause is similar or analogous to it. 13. I am a contingent being. This is since I undeniably exist, and I am neither a necessary being nor an impossible being. I'm not an impossible being since I do actually exist, and I am not a necessary being because I change or come to be, which a necessary being cannot do. Hence, I am a contingent being, but only a necessary being can cause a contingent being. Even a pantheist who claims to be identical to God admits that he or she came to be in a state of enlightenment, and thus not always was in it. 14. Therefore, a necessary being of pure actuality exists that causes me to exist in the moment, right here and now, not just in the past, right here and now. And based upon this, Geisler, following Aquinas, even following the old Augustinian concept, This necessary being is a being of pure actuality with no potentiality and has certain necessary attributes. 1, immutable, since it has no potential to change. Eternal, since that involves change. Immaterial, since that involves change. Infinite, since it has no potentiality to limit it. Simple, since it has no potential to be divided. It must be uncaused being, since it is a necessary being, and a necessary being cannot be caused to come to be. So it can't be caused, nor can it be self-caused, which is a contradiction. Hence, it must be an uncaused being. It must be only one being, since there can't be 2 or more infinite beings or 2 or more beings of pure actuality. There is no way they could differ in their being, for they are both the same kind of being, and beings cannot differ in the very respect in which they are the same. It must be infinitely knowing, omniscient, since I am a knowing being that it caused to exist, and a cause cannot give what it does not have. It must be omnipotent, since it's infinite and it has the power to cause finite beings to exist. It must be morally perfect. Why? Because it causes morally perfect or moral beings to exist, and it cannot share with it what it does not have. It must be a personal being, since it made personal beings, and the effect is similar to its efficient cause. The point is this infinite, eternal, morally perfect, omniscient, omnipotent, immutable, uncaused being is the cause of all finite beings. And that is what we all mean by the term God. So can we prove the existence and attributes of God? Yes. How? Based off of self-evident first principles. So the point that I want you to see on this is we are going to spend more time breaking this down, looking at the specifics of Johnson's arguments and maybe other figures. But I wanted to lay out some clear basic guidelines of what do we mean. So in summary, what I want you to know is this. Metaphysics is a science that can be done. Natural theology is possible. Christians have done it for centuries. The Reformed tradition has carried it on. The non-Reformed tradition has carried it on. And if they're going to, in many ways, criticize us for embracing the classical realist tradition and use that as some kind of argument to do away with what we're doing, well, what about their embrace of modernity? In particular, things coming from figures like Kant and other individuals that are denying that we can have a posteriori reasoning. Now, if they don't like those types of claims because they say, well, we're not doing exactly what they're doing. Well, neither was Aquinas doing exactly what Aristotle was doing. And neither was Augustine doing exactly what Plato was doing. Rather, they took these features of reality and by God's grace and providence, used them to fulfill the apologetic task.